Oh. There you go.
I'd like to welcome participants to the joint hybrid planning board meeting of November 27th, 2023. This time I'd like to take a call to order. Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Ms. Delicio.
Here.
Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Only.
Here.
Philbrick.
Here.
And Ms. Tenney.
Here.
Thank you. Looks like we have a quorum tonight. I'd like to remind all board members asked to be recognized by the chair if they wish to speak. This meeting is being recorded. Also, I'd like all to stress for board members to address each other and the public with respect going forward. I'm going to ask board members to address each other by their last names as a with some kind of vendors on the item. Except with me, since I'm a 6-syllable last name, I will accept Ron.
Mr. Ron? Mr. Ron.
Thank you. Acknowledgement, receipt of correspondence. Ms. Iavoni's been busy. I have 10:27, 10:30, 11:11, 11:13, and then I think we've got one on 11:25. Also, Gail has added Essex Planning Board, Essex EBA, and Wenham Planning Board.
One of those new notices or they from last meeting?
The Essex ones, Gail, Shion,
They're new.
okay.
I actually forgot to put correspondence in the meeting packet. Sorry.
Okay, can you put it in for our next meeting?
I can put it in tomorrow.
At this time, the board would take public comments on items not on the agenda with a limited amount of time. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Okay, next item on the agenda, cell signaling technologies discussion. I see Greg's with us. Greg, I was going to ask you if you have any update on the consultants or where that stands. And you're on mute.
Yep, sorry, got it there. So yes, we've been reaching out to some of the recommended consultants that Ms. Ware had provided us, and also reaching out to a few that the DPW has recommended. So we're working through that list, and we'll have recommendations for you certainly by the first of the year, if not sooner.
So, according to Mr. Glovsky, the special permit may come to us next month. Does the clock start ticking once that permit gets in our hand?
Right, the clock will start ticking once it's filed, but you can always, through mutual agreement, extend the review time. But nonetheless, as long as you're continuing the hearings, then you'll be in good shape.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Creighton.
I have a question for Greg, if I may.
Yeah.
Greg, given that we don't have a planner, would you be reviewing their application to make sure it's complete? Because I know sometimes if the application is not complete and we started the clock, then it, so we want to start the clock when the application is complete. So that means somebody needs to check it outside of the meeting. Would that be you, or do you want one of us to do that with you, or how should we do that?
Right, we'll also draw on the support that we have from MAPC to help us with that technical review.
Okay, great.
I think we could do it too, though, right? I mean, I don't think.
So when it comes into our packet, we can all
Any comments?
maybe, comment on its completeness. If it's missing a traffic study or it's missing a whatever, then. Because it does seem like it makes sense to have the clock start once the application's complete.
So can we clarify that?
So what's,
I don't think we need to lean on MAPC for completeness. I think we're capable of doing that ourselves.
was there any reason we wouldn't use our professional staff to at least take a first look at it, and then if we have comments, we can.
It hasn't
them
been
to
in our
them.
job description before. So it was never Sue Brown's job to look for completeness. When she took over her different role, that was no longer hers. She put it on us, so I don't know if we should keep putting it back onto a community or person that doesn't know anything about our community. Our rules, our regulations, our bylaws are quite unique, so I think we should just do it in-house.
I think the belt and suspenders approach is good, where we can review it and they can review it. See, we don't have to accept their comments, but at least we'll have some backup.
Trying to be cognizant and mindful of taxpayer dollars, right? So if this was usually our job, just don't know why we need to.
We don't have a planner.
I never did it before.
Ms. Foley,
So could you clarify, we haven't heard anything that we have MAPC, so is there something that the board should know?
yeah, Greg, could you brief the board on the MAPC hiring help?
Sure, yeah, so we reached out to a number of different possible folks who could provide interim planning, and MAPC stepped forward. We have with us actually tonight, Kudeep Kaur is listening in. We brought them on board to help us with technical aspects for the board, and one of the top priorities would be to help making sure that we're processing the CST application properly and according to both state and our local bylaws, state statutes and our local bylaws.
Or Ms. Steady?
Fine, thanks. That's fine. I was just going to say that, I think having technical guidance from MEPC or whomever is Greg's, the town administrator's resource. Makes sense. This is a big project with a lot of stake and a lot of technical requirements, so it seems like a benefit to me to have the planning board look at it from our own perspective and to have Greg avail himself of technical resources.
Okay. Thank you. At our last meeting, it was suggested we have scheduled a site visit ahead of the winter, which was a good idea. So we have a Saturday, 9:30 a.m. site visit with cell signaling up at the site. I will send you all tomorrow a map where we're gonna park and how to get there. So I think 6 of you have said you can attend, and Ms. Philbrick will do it on her own.
We just back up for the correspondence for a minute. I mean, it's not in our packet. It's not in our folder at all, right? Is that correct?
So Gail said she has yet to put the Essex stuff and the Wenham stuff in, but she'll do it tomorrow.
I don't see anything. The Ivoni, right? Nothing.
Ivoni's all came by email, right?
Yeah, I didn't transfer them into the packet. You've all got them via email, either through Gail or by Lorraine herself. I was out of town this week and I didn't put any in. But I can do that tomorrow.
I just want to make sure there's nothing that's time sensitive. I mean, we're not going to meet again for 2 weeks, so.
Do that.
So would it come from Gail?
Some came to Gail and said distribute to this planning board, and some came directly to the planning board. I don't know which is which, but I'll get them all in tomorrow.
I don't think you see anything from Gail forwarding any response.
Okay,
So can we just get the correspondence forwarded as it comes? Is that normal practice? Are we doing something different now?
I'll move it along.
Thank you.
Correspondence is forwarded the day I receive it, usually within an hour or less.
You got it?
Not the Essex or the Wenham stuff.
All right, let's, I'll get that in there. Town planner update, Greg, any news on interviews or applications or any update?
So we have the one candidate that was interviewed, and we have done a background check and gotten extremely positive reference comments back from the references that the gentleman provided. The other leading candidates that we have both dropped out, and so I'd love to just touch base with the folks who helped with the interviews. But my recommendation is leaning strongly towards bringing on board this individual and offering them the position. And we could have the person certainly on board by the first of the year. So
Thank
let me circle back to those who participated in the interview process just to get that feedback, and then I can provide an additional update.
Okay, thank you. So next item is rules and regulations discussion on driveway openings from the board, and we also received from Greg comments from town council. Gail posted everyone's comments today on in our meeting packet site. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to go through them, or I didn't think we wanted to go through everybody's comments. They were really distilled, and there's
Can I ask a question?
20 pages of them.
So town council sent us some comments about the rules and regulations in general, but we haven't addressed that yet.
See those? Chuck Dam sent us some.
No, the town council,
Town
this is,
council.
that's old.
Yeah, that's not on the agenda.
So just point of clarification, I think Ms. Delicio is correct that we had some comments from town council on some portion of the regulations. And we were tonight just looking at we had agreed we were just gonna look at the driveway entrances and try to wrap that part up tonight, and then come back to the other chunks of it. And so when we do that, I would think that we would but I believe we all had those comments from town council, and one of the comments last time is that we had not received town council comments on the driveway entrances. So now we have that, and I think that's what we're on. I think that's what we're talking about tonight.
Right, so the comments Greg sent were
Right,
on.
for driveway entrances.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, that's what.
we're not talking about.
Okay.
Well, just
So,
as a,
Mary, Ms. Rowland.
thank you. I think what Ms. Delicio was commenting on, and that we can put on a future agenda, is that town council recommended we not adopt the rules and regulations because they were in violation of 40A and other of our bylaws. So I think we need to look at that document in its entirety. Just doing curb cuts tonight, but that should be a priority.
I'll do that. Okay, so, getting along with these comments on the curb cuts themselves. Who would like to start? I think I would. I don't think you don't mind, so. I went to find the application for the curb cuts, and it's under the planning board. And then it refers to, zoning bylaw 6.2.7. And then it goes through, some items. So I had some comments mostly on this application. that I think, you know, some of them are really de minimis type comments and some. So the application for curb is accessed through the planning board site, and I suggest it's be accessed through the DPW site. That was one of my comments. It refers to bylaw 6.2.7, should be general bylaw of the II, which occurs twice in the application. The site plan should be prepared by, and I added this language, registered by an engineer registered in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I suggested adding that. And the radius of the curb cut should be in concert with the proposed rules and regulations for the II. I said drain should say storm drains, minor. References to the planning board should be changed to DPW. On the two scales, it looks like there are two scales, but one refers to the building permit scale, 1 in 100, which is a bird's eye view. And then the curb opening scale, which is 1 inch equals 40, which I think is okay. The VII states within 5 feet of any lot line application states to show side and rear setbacks. Is that the same thing? I don't know. And VII should add under location. In addition to all the items mentioned or any other impediments to sight lines, I wanted to add that language on the application. So those were my comments, mostly on the application itself, which I think is completely, outdated at this point. Laura.
Yes, just a couple of clarifying questions. When you say the application, is it this form that was attached to our earlier draft? Because
So it's what I pulled off.
that's not attached to what council. Yeah, it says special permit application, non-compliant curb cut and driveway.
Application for driveway curb cuts under Manchester by the Sea zoning law 6.7.
That's, you pulled that off the website?
This came off the website live, so.
That's not, yeah.
Okay,
So,
not to confuse things, but there's a different,
There's a
So
different
where
one in
is
the
the different-
regulations.
Where is the different one being, where is it located?
It's attached,
It's
there's
in the
3
regulations.
forms behind.
So one of the problems is we need to update the website.
So this is all out, what I made comments on.
Maybe not.
No,
No, I think
That's
you're,
there.
I think your comments are still good.
There's the basic driveway entrance application. And then there's the application of the planning board for not a non-compliant driveway.
Right.
and then there's the decisions
And
form.
it's located in the DPW site?
No, it's just in this, I don't know why it didn't get onto the website as part of its final journey, but there's this,
So it's not available to the public at all?
right, I think. We're not clear how it was available to the public, so that's.
Because we didn't
Well,
turn it over
yeah.
to the DPW yet. I mean, that's facts, right?
To be clear, we haven't. The DPW doesn't have any of our rules and regulations yet, so we haven't passed over anything. But we haven't,
So how did they
So-
do? Sarah, this was great.
So I think we did on June 12th vote to approve this with all its flaws. Then at the last meeting, we reviewed it and we said we should have town council. Clearly it's got some errors and omissions and problems. We all recognize that. And we then asked for town council, but we did approve it on July 12th. Where it resides on the website or whether or not DPW, I believe DPW does have this. Gail, I think, gave it to them or Betsy. So we clearly, I think we can all agree that that piece of where it resides and that it needs to be cleaned up and it needs to be in the right place on the website and so applicants can find it. But those seem like they could be solved by Greg's office or Tiffany. At least the where to find it, but I think then,
And what's in it?
What's in
Needs to be, and,
so.
yeah, well, I mean, I think it should reside in the DPW portion, but I don't know.
Or with the building
Well, I
inspector.
It's Delicia.
Regardless if we passed this on July 12th, and the next step was to have town council look at it, and they looked at certain sections, and then they got back to us months later and said, their recommendation was that we don't approve it in this. So I think we're in a bit of a quandary. I mean, it's great that we voted on it, but town council said it's not in a working format and it's in violation of 40A, and we have so many comments tonight. So yeah, a majority of the board said that they like this document, but the document then went to town council and said it's not workable. So I'm not sure how we never turned it over to DPW, and that was the agreement. So I'm not sure where this, I guess it's irrelevant to me if we voted it in. We never turned it over to DPW yet. And that was the agreement, that we were going to sit down with DPW and go over the regulations and go forward.
This is curb cuts. I'm just making.
Yes, I think regardless of how we got to where we are, I think we have a document that we need to clean up. And so I suggest that we talk about how we're gonna clean it up, and so that we can fix the problem. And it seems to me that Ron has walked through a number of sort of administrative problems. I think there are a couple other administrative problems. One is some significant repetition, which we all have identified. I don't know that we need to go through it in detail. Typos, incorrect, that kind of thing, that I think we have done a good job collectively of identifying many of those. So, and then I think that there are a few content things that I would suggest we spend our time tonight talking about, agreeing on the content, and then figure out who among us is going to advance this to fix the typos, delete the redundant material, and give it back to us in a format and make it comply with the town council requirements. So yes, it has problems, but let's figure out the solutions.
Ms. Tenney?
Could I suggest we start with the comments from town council? Those are substantive.
Yeah.
Maybe we walk through those first, and the town council, as I think, maybe Ms. Alicio pointed out, didn't review the forms, and so I think we should I would suggest we review the forms together, and perhaps we can prioritize, in terms of the redundancy, we could get the checklist into the form in terms of the requirements that you submit, and update the forms to include that, and then certainly the DPW should review with us, or should review, the council suggested that. Whether it's council needs to review the checklist forms, I don't know, that might be more of an administrative task, but I think we have good substantive comments from council.
All right, we can do that. That's a good idea. Well, the board agrees. Let's move forward with town council comments. So Article 7, regulations for driveway entrances. First comment is, you may wish to reference here, Article 10, Section 46 of the general bylaw has authority for the planning board to promulgate regulations. And that is in the first line.
I actually printed out a couple copies of that if anybody wants to
I did
reference.
too.
So Ron, can I clarify which version we're going by? Because there was KP Law comments to strike out language, and then we had in our folder, it was already taken out of the document. So I don't know who's been changing the document. Are we going on the original comments or some revised version?
I put in
We did
the
not discuss.
comments that I received from Greg about a week ago, just before the holiday. I put KP Law's comments in our meeting site. Now, I think it was changed as Gail, you overwrote that. Did you know what you put in?
I did not overwrite anything.
Okay.
Because there's some
Betsy might have done that.
that they commented in October to remove a paragraph, like the building inspector will not issue a
Yes, that's the
building.
comment. That's the one.
And then all of a sudden that paragraph is out of the document, so
I
just
have
wanna
it
make
as a cross
sure.
out. Did you print the one where it accepted the changes? Because that's what I printed out. The one, if you
Yeah.
printed out a copy that said accept all changes, it'll be removed.
No, I didn't print it except all
Okay.
changes. I have two versions, so I just want to make sure which one we're going on, the original one.
I'm using the
Okay.
one where they cross out that
I
paragraph.
think we're looking at KP Law 86619 Manchester PLD driveway entrances.doc.
As revised as of 6/9/2023.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at. Okay, so. How do we want to do this? Do we want to go through, Laura?
There aren't that many comments from the council. Could we just go through each one and say, agree, discussion,
Yeah.
and then, check it off or discuss?
Okay, who has the copy? You want to
Have
go
some,
through
yeah,
them, Sarah?
I can.
And,
The first one is to just reference the general bylaws and with a date and a date. Anybody object to that? Okay, the next comment is the building, I have this, do you have it? The building inspector, we cannot, striking the paragraph, but the building inspector shall not issue a building permit. He says we cannot do that legally, so he recommends striking that paragraph. Any objections?
I think we have the date first,
Pardon me?
insert the date.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The next comment is inserting a date.
Oh, I was putting those two together, sorry. So the second comment is insert specific date of the approval, which I believe was. I don't have the date. Anybody object to the inserting the date?
So is that a broad date, 2023, like anytime in 2023?
Yeah, I think
Oh,
we
I
have to do it the date that we adopt the
Right.
these regulations, so that might be left blank at this moment.
That would be the date of the town meeting.
No, the date
No.
that I think Ms. Foley's referring to when we agree on this, but the date
Correct,
is-
because
Okay.
town meeting was a bylaw, this is the rules and regulations.
I agree
So
with
that's
that.
the date of
The date
adoption.
when we vote on this. I know.
Okay. Sounds good. Sorry, didn't mean to. Then the building inspector will, that paragraph, strike that paragraph.
Right.
Any objection?
Well, I actually want to go back to the date. So have things been approved and are they going to be approved?
I think we just,
We'll put that date in when we approve it.
No, but has Chuck approved some? So is there an issue with some maybe that have been approved already? Like, I think this is,
I think there are, and maybe that's a topic after we discuss this document, that perhaps curb cut approvals have to be put on pause and we have to discuss what has happened to date.
well, things that are exempt from this. I mean, I'm just not sure about that. The things that have already been approved are exempt.
so from a practical matter, are you suggesting that all driveway entrances that have been approved by the DPW should be null and void?
I don't know. I need to take a look at them.
I think town council would have to weigh in on that, because if we haven't adopted rules and regulations that are valid, I don't know, we've officially passed it off to the DPW, which was part of the adoption of the bylaw.
So what's the solution to that in terms of sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
So what it seems to me we had, the situation is however one interprets it. We passed some rules that have some flaws. The DPW has approved some permits. If there are substantive, it seems to me that to go back and have them be invalidated
Well, they could be,
on a procedural basis seems to be bureaucratic and unnecessary. And
I mean, a neighbor could appeal the approval. Again, this is being approved by a registered professional engineer. I don't think we're hurting the town by having an engineer approve a drainage and safety issue on a curb cut. I don't think we're damaging anything by not having these exact rules in place. But
Yeah, I would just say I'm sure it's all in good faith, but we should probably get town council's opinion on how a process works that hasn't really fully been in place, that is dependent on rules and regulations that aren't really valid yet. So I don't think it's for any of us to decide. I think it's town council should give an opinion on the legality of it, and then we move forward from that.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Creighton,
maybe we could just ask Greg for his advice, because it seems to me that we have a general bylaw. If Mr. Lezio, Ms. Foley are correct, then we don't have any regulations, but the general bylaw still provides a process for the DPW to review driveway entrances. in the absence of regulations, it would seem to me, but, Greg, any thoughts about a way out of this?
I mean, I'm happy to confirm with town council, but I believe he would say that the regulations govern, I'm sorry, the bylaw governs. And that as long as what was approved was within the parameters of a standard driveway, then that those that have been approved under those conditions are fine.
Right.
But I'm happy to confirm that if people want to have that confirmation.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, personally, I would, I mean, because it says, the bylaw says, subject to regulations developed by the planning board, so I think that's the catch.
Have town council review that. Let's continue with the town council comments on the curb cuts. Driveway.
So how about the building inspector paragraph? Anybody object to deleting that paragraph? Okay. Existing, the comment about existing residences and commercial uses. Why is there a different application for new and existing uses?
So, oh, you skipped the one above that.
Well, and then, yeah, so I'll come back.
So this title is different than what's in our folder. So this says existing residents and commercial uses. Said new.
Reading the KP law.
This is the second paragraph.
Okay, sorry, we'll come back to the penalty piece in a second. So there's I think that was a substantive issue that I thought we should discuss, is why do we want to continue to distinguish between existing residences and commercial?
Wider for a commercial, Lawrence,
I think we could potentially just strike existing and say residential and commercial use. Because it's not asking us a dimensional question, it's asking why would we make a different rule for existing versus new? And there may be other reviews like site plan review that apply to a special permit, say, that would capture that. But here, I think we're just talking about curb cuts,
Mhm.
a new curb cut.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
yes. Only.
So I think the distinction was that a existing driveway that wasn't associated with a building permit would go to the DPW directly. Whereas a new construction project with a driveway would go to the building inspector, and then he would forward the driveway entrance to the DPW. I think that's the only distinction. I don't think it's important either. I think it just can be something handled in the application form.
The general bylaw clarifies it. I think the general bylaw clarifies it. The general bylaw says applicability, all new and relocated driveway entrances for all land uses shall require a permit issued by the DPW.
General bylaw is that?
This is the driveway curb cut
Yeah.
bylaw. This is the general bylaw on driveway entrances that we passed.
Penny?
I'm just reading this again. So the second paragraph starts with new residential, commercial, and institutional development. This one starts with existing residential and commercial uses. Council is asking, why is there a different process? New versus existing. The new one seems to include more, maybe we just need to make these two paragraphs align and strike existing and new. So it's the same. Same submittal requirements, same dimensional requirements and everything else. Yeah, it's a driveway.
But they're widening it.
It still needs to meet these regulations.
Okay, because that's not in a general bylaw. The general bylaw just says new and relocated, not widening.
May I respond? I read that based on some of the other comments from the council about what's in and out of the scope. This should be concerned with is width of the entry at the curb cut, at the point where it meets the street.
Mhm.
And so if they're widening driveways further in, we don't address that here, it's not part of this purview. Other dimensional, the length and other parts of the discussion are outside of the scope of entrances. So if they're widening, if they're widening the rest of the driveway, not jurisdiction of this regulation, if I understand council's comments. If they're widening it at the curb cut, it still has to correspond with the dimensional requirements. That's the way I read it.
One more clarifying question, if we're merging the two paragraphs, because one has residential, commercial and institutional, I'm not sure what that is, and then one just says residence and commercial.
This is the top paragraph.
So that was gonna be,
Institutional different than commercial?
so one of my comments was, we didn't have anything institutional in our bylaws at all. So we don't even have this definition, so.
So I think what is done here is, to Laura's point, is that there's sort of two sets of application requirements, one for this, so why not just reference the bylaw, new and relocated driveway entrances, and I would say relocated means includes widening. 'Cause you're relocating a portion of the entrance for land uses, and then you have these duplicative requirements, just have application requirements specified. And not try to distinguish between these two.
So I think what you were
Yeah,
trying to do
right.
here was that if it was a new one, it needed to come to DPW before the building permit was issued. We were trying to get away from. Here's our construction plan, and oh, by the way, this is the only place the curb cut could go. So I think we were trying to make sure that we captured that problem with new construction, or potential problem with new construction. You're trying to just put a timeline in that.
Mr. Chair. Could we address what Ms. Delicio is trying to get at with, we could perhaps strike institutional since we have no institutional zoning. And just say residential, commercial, and then collapse all these into one and always copy the building inspector and DPW.
Yeah, I think that's,
Can you take that sequence question out?
I agree with that.
I agree. My only question is further in the document, they talk about the the town planner reviews also, and then goes on a site walk. So
No. We're,
unless we're striking that as well, what is,
well, let's go through this in order, and then we'll get, when we get to that, we'll see what we want to do.
So is the general agreement that we're gonna collapse, just not make a distinction between new and existing?
Right, and then merge the language. I
Merge
mean,
the-
they talk about an application fee in one paragraph, but not in the other.
Right,
And then they have the scale in one and not in the other, so.
yeah, I think,
If you merge them, you'll get both.
right, I think that we need application requirements in one place and one list. Whether it's on the application or the application references the regulations, either way, seems to me.
Right. How are we gonna merge them? Who's,
I think, can we go through the comments and then get the general intent rather than
Okay.
try to wordsmith this?
all right,
Okay, the other comment on that page is furthermore, article. The general bylaws provides a penalty for failing to obtain a driveway entrance permit. It states failure to comply with this bylaw should result in a fine. So do we want to restate that in I'm not sure what his point here is, except to say that we're covered, I guess is his point. Shall we restate that, or should we just let it live in the general bylaw?
does it live in the bylaw now, that $50 fine per
He
day?
says it does. Section D.
Yes.
All
Does
driveway,
it make sense to put there, or just open the purpose right up front?
it's in
in
D, failure to comply with this bylaw should result in a
All
fine.
right, so,
So the question is, do we need to restate that in the regulations?
It won't hurt.
Laura,
it's,
I think it'll hurt. I think we should state it once Because if it ever changes in
Right, then you
one
gotta,
document or the other, then you're out of alignment. So
Right.
if the general bylaw says it, then let's go with the general bylaws.
Well, then we should reference the general bylaw.
Which I think is his point.
that's the point, we're gonna do that up here.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Next comment,
right, next.
first paragraph.
So then we have this whole list of application requirements. We talked about where they should live. In general, should they be in, I think, is there any disagreement that we just need one list? In one place and then reference it? In what, you know, if we want to reference, if it's in the application, it should be referenced. Applications shall follow those in the application in the.
This is just where I feel.
Or shall we, or shall we have them in the regulations and then have the application reference the regulations? Or do we need more than one list?
I think it should be in the application.
That's what I was just gonna say. I feel like we're tying ourselves and restricting it. If we just mention the application, we can change the application without changing the regulations again.
To clarify question, by that you mean one of these forms as the
Yes.
application?
Yeah. Okay, so
I agree
reference
with
that.
that.
Okay, then let's go through the list.
And it just seems.
This is better language than that's what's in the application, these ones.
Yes, these are better. There's one that's not here, which is that a subdivision plan, if it's been approved, can take the place, so that should be number 6. That one that's somewhere else.
So,
Say that again, subdivision.
A subdivision plan, if, because when you approve a subdivision, you approve the driveway entrances as part of the plan. And somewhere there is a different list of application requirements. And one of them is that a subdivision plan could be
It's in the second paragraph on the first page. When they were gonna consolidate that last
Yeah.
sentence. If the property has been subdivided in
that's
accordance
number
with subdivision control law, then a copy of the approved plan should be submitted.
Yeah.
In lieu of an application as evidence of prior approval.
so that becomes the number 6.
But you could put that as a number 6,
Really?
or
Right
you
here.
could list it as an or.
Right.
Residential and commercial.
Yeah.
No.
So that was the one I identified as being.
so are we reviewing these for content now, or are we gonna review them later? The list?
Yeah,
Yeah, because we never, we did not agree to allowing the DPW to waive requirements, and town council actually says they can't, so I thought they said that. Here to say it.
yeah, because then it would be, so number 5 gets struck. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
First paragraph.
So he's waiving the fact that the plan doesn't have to be 1 inch equals
Right.
40, is that what?
He's waiving the requirements,
Of a
not the,
plan.
of the plan.
Okay, but it's not waiving the
The-
curb cut of the driveway in.
Right, he's saying if you have a napkin and he can tell that that's the.
Yeah, no, I don't like this being waived.
Yeah, so we didn't agree to that.
I don't know if I can. Let's agree to take that out.
Just think about this.
Got 1 vote, 2.
No, I wasn't voting.
Well, I guess the question would be, a minor widening. I want to widen this because
May I make a procedural suggestion? I think this is an important comment to come back to. Could we just circle it? Because it's not in the it's not in the council's review yet and say, in principle, we
Yeah,
want to move this. Let's come back and look at number 5, but I think it would just be great if we could just finish getting through the councils.
Yeah,
And
number
highlight
4
what we
is
wanna come back
incorrect as well, but we'll do that.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Number 4 is incorrect as well, but we can come back.
And he does comment
He does
on that, so
comment.
we could pick that one up.
Right, so that one should be 50, is that what you
Well,
think?
the bylaw states 10. And it's in the nearest driveway entrance.
So this is not the requirements for the driveway, it's simply the requirements for the application. So this is if the entrance is within a certain distance of the other driveway, it should be shown on the site plan. not whether or not it's approved.
I don't remember.
And you're right, it is that the general bylaws has 10 feet from the nearest driveway entrance. Must be more than,
But unless somebody's referring to the general bylaw and they're just looking at the application, I'm not clear that they'll know that it.
well, I think that's later in the,
Okay. When we do the app.
So that's another inch of plans, but I don't think it's a big deal for the owners. Ms. Jenny?
Yeah, regarding the 40 and 50, there are two references that are in conflict with one another. Just about what you show on your site plan, not about the distance of your driveway from another driveway or an intersection. And if we require 50, then we get a little more context, which I think is worth having in the review versus 40. So I would say
strong feeling.
50 everywhere.
1 inch is 50 is a pretty small,
1 inch.
Yeah.
more.
it's gonna be a very.
Or-
Well, no, we're
Yeah.
not saying, excuse me, I'm sorry, we're not saying scale, 40 scale, 50 scale. We're
Right,
saying
distance.
distance from another driver or an intersection, we're going to the larger distance. So that we can see a little more on the site plan.
So what is the scale that we're requiring?
1 inch equals 40 for the detailed plan, and 1 inch equals 100 for the overall, your house site plan.
That's a pretty small scale.
1 inch equals 40, it's pretty standard, I think.
Yeah, that's not what we're commenting on right now. Beg your pardon, just trying to keep us on.
You also have to, show features that are also within 50 feet, such as poles and hydrants, so it stands to reason that, that if you have a,
Yeah, driveway. you should
Driveway.
show it.
Yeah.
Right.
okay, so the next one is a review of applications. The DPW may conduct a site walk or shall as part of the approval process and shall inspect the completed driveway to ensure compliance with the plan. And his comment is confirm with the DPW their site work, walk and as-built inspection is required for every driveway. I think it makes sense to
I
leave
think-
that in.
I think it does, absolutely.
So my concern with this is that are we doing one sorts of rules and regulations if it's DPW and or planning board? Because the planning board would have site visit.
That's,
Yeah, well, that's under special permit.
This is a special permit also, sorry.
So where are we either differentiating the two processes or stating, this is what happens under DPW, this is what happens under planning board? Are we trying to do one?
I think the DPW should be made to make a site visit, but
I
I don't know, Sarah, Mr. Craig.
So I agree. I think that at this point, we should do a site visit and a post-site. I don't think we're looking for as-built plans, but we're at just to compliance, visual compliance. I think both of those are good. And then to Ms. Foley's question about if whatever the criteria, which we haven't gotten to and include are not met, then it becomes a special permit by the planning board, and we have a special permit process. And so I would say that that's where the process for the planning board is in the special permit process. Just same way we would go through cell signaling, same thing, that's a special, that's gonna have a hearing. Special permit, that's what it says.
Does it say that?
Any curb cuts that do not apply with the criteria therein, or in the opinion of DPW to require special review, may be permitted if a special permit is granted by the planning board. That's out of the general bylaw.
So back on this optional with the DPW, did we want to make it not optional? Is that what Ms. Tenny?
This is really where we should get Chuck's input.
Yeah, that's,
So the document's conflicting. Sometimes it calls for a site inspection at the beginning to get the general lay of the land. Sometimes depending on the form or the regulation and the different forms. Sometimes it says we want one at final, substantial completion. So it's all over the place and it ends up being 2 to 3 site visits, which I think is an extraordinary amount of work for the DPW. I think one site visit at the DPW's discretion, and let's ask Chuck when he thinks the right time is to visit. And then we can make it that one.
Ron?
Ms. Foley?
I agree with that. I'm just asking, I know town council had recommended that we get the input from DPW and the building inspector. Have we gotten that?
I think we want to clean this up first.
Let's give them, and then we'll have Nate or Chuck come in. I don't know if we're gonna have to get Paul. But Chuck or Nate to come in and opine on what we've done. Clean it up.
Well, seeing that they're approving them, maybe sooner than later, we should get them in.
Yeah, you can get it, let's clean it up, by December, I'll have it in the next meeting.
Yeah.
If we can clean this up.
Yeah.
Today. I don't know who's gonna do all the cleaning.
Okay.
Need a house cleaner.
Okay, let's keep going through these comments. So now we get into criteria.
Oh,
Oh,
before we get to criteria, just before we forget. We talked about subdivision, if you have a subdivision approved, that then you don't have to go to DPW. Wouldn't that be the same with a site plan review, if we did a site plan review? That would also specify the driveways. I'm trying to avoid having a situation where, yeah, where there's two simultaneous reviews that may not
Well,
agree with each other.
Which deletes it.
just thinking ahead to what was put into next week's folder, the A and R. I mean, we need to probably think about that also. Right, that situation? How that would be addressed? The Flat Lake project.
So what are you suggesting we do to avoid the duplication?
Or just have include a subdivision control or a site plan review by the planning board.
Any objections to the or site plan? Number 6, let's just stick on that one.
Okay.
Where's number 6?
Okay, so now
Opposed to,
we're gonna ask Chuck about whether
right,
those.
it's optional
yeah.
on, to come at the beginning, the
Right.
end, the middle, wherever the
Okay.
vote.
So construction of the improvements cannot be initiated without a permit. And then can I just suggest that we reference the general bylaws for penalties? At that, after that sentence,
Sorry, where are you?
right after the review of applications, the
Okay.
next paragraph, right, construction improvements cannot be initiated without a permit. And then reference the general bylaws for the penalties. I'm just figuring that we want to. Kind of, I do think the penalties are important to reference, so.
We circle this one and come
Yeah.
back to it.
Yep. Okay, sorry, let's keep going, all right?
Just general high level, it was one of my comments overall, but I think we're all seeing this, we're all seeing where are you talking about? My general comment was, this all needs to be numbered and lettered. So.
Agreed.
Maybe start with this one and work our way backwards with the rest of them.
Formatting.
Yeah, formatting is important. We'll do like line numbers when we review it next. Okay, so now we have the criteria.
So there's a cross out here in the curve number of curb cuts.
Well, that's because the general bylaw says one curb cut.
Wait, where are you?
If somebody wants 2 curb cuts, they have to come for a special permit.
And that's what we agreed to.
So we cannot authorize via regulation, an additional curb cut on a residential lot.
Yeah.
It's like we've done that once already.
Well, that was in our old
Yeah.
process.
So how do we handle 2 curb cuts on?
We come to the planning.
They come to
board.
Comes
us.
to the planning board for a special
Okay.
permit.
So he's saying, no, we have to amend the general bylaw because we cornered ourselves in with the
Right, because we can't.
general
authorize.
bylaw saying 1, and now we're trying to say 2. You can't do that.
No, we can do it with a special permit.
No,
It
he
says
says
you
in
can't-
here,
can't
he's
authorize,
comments,
he
yeah.
said.
No, we can't authorize DPW to approve it, but we could grant a special permit.
Oh, is that what he means?
I think that's what he means.
So Ron, he says, at the end, he says, the general bylaw will need to be amended.
Yeah.
So I read that to say that
Just clarification from town council on that one.
do we need clarification?
It's not
Well, I don't know, I
clearly.
mean, Chris is saying it only refers to.
Or does it have to go to the
DPW
ZBA as a
will allow it
variance?
to, but then it comes to us, but you're saying we can't do anything unless the general bylaw.
Well, I'm just reading what town council wrote. and-
Where are you reading that?
So
from?
town council wrote, the planning board cannot authorize via regulation an additional curb cut on a residential lot. If the town would like to get the option of having 2 curb cuts on residential lots, the general bylaw will need to be amended.
So we need to get, the question is, can the special permit do that, or would a ZBA variance be required? We don't know that. But let's just start with to Laura's point, so we would strike what if he has I think it's John, just has stricken here, starting with her, however, and ending with pedestrian.
Starting with typically.
Yeah, getting typically shall be limited to a single curb cut period.
Yeah, Greg has his hand raised.
Mr. Fettisfield, sorry.
Or Mr.
Yes, Ron, I would concur with Mary's reading there that town council has advised that the bylaw now limits or defines the parameters. And you as a planning board can't go beyond what the bylaw has stipulated. So if you want to have the option of more than one curb cut to a property, then you need to amend the bylaw.
And it can't be overruled by special permit.
Not by your special permit.
But by the ZBA probably. Maybe.
No,
It's, I
Oh,
don't
I'm
believe so, but I can
Okay,
again, confirm that.
all right.
All right.
do we have a process for curb cuts to go as a variance to ZBA?
No, that's a question. Okay. All right, so width
Ron
is,
Lord.
Laura, sorry.
Name is Molly.
Reading in,
So recognizing that maybe we have to come back and do the general bylaws some other night. We're trying to get the standard application for DPW done, which seems to me our intent is, as it is struck out by council here, which is strike typical and strike the following paragraph. And when we come back to the general bylaws and we talk about a special permit through ZBA or planning board, we'll correct it if it needs correction, but the standard DPW is 1 curb cut. I think we're just aligning that. So I would recommend we accept that deletion.
okay. And similarly, unless an exception granted by DPW, we're striking that same reason
Mhm.
in terms of the width, and those are consistent with the general bylaw. Okay. Where the street has consistent curving, the radius of the curve. Okay. Well, I think,
Question, are we adding his language that he put in on comment on page 1, 2, the 3rd page? So he says to strike the multi-car garage, blah, 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 but then he says if the driveway is less than 8 feet in width or more than 12 feet, do you see that paragraph? Is he adding that?
are you just above the little diagram? Is that right?
Yeah.
Adding that?
So if they want to change the dimensional requirements, it goes to us, is what you're saying.
Correct.
So. Of the maximum or minimums.
Right, he says that we cannot, that the DPW has to stick to the bylaw. Driveway, and he's just, so his language there is straight out of the general bylaw, I believe.
Okay.
I think I'm trying to interpret this comment too, that Mr. Foley is pointing out, and I'm interpreting it as he's clarifying, sort of restating the maximum and minimum as defined in that bullet, and then also shown, perhaps shown in this, I don't know, maybe the plan is actually not referring to that minimum. So then he's saying, these are the things, these are the criteria it has to meet, and then if it doesn't meet that, less than 8 feet, more than 12 feet, or the flare doesn't meet the
Mhm.
dimensional requirements,
And it
then,
may be.
if applicable, a special permit from the planning board is required.
Mhm.
So it seems like it's the same intent, but it's clarifying,
Mhm.
doesn't meet the criteria, then it goes to special permit from the planning board.
Right, because I don't think we're clarifying that anywhere else, so I think
Right.
we need that clarity.
So we should add that.
Mhm.
Just put that sentence in there.
Okay, and then the flare at the intersection of 1 to 4 feet. I think that the general bylaw says no more than 3 feet. So if his reasoning. By his prior reasoning, we couldn't have it 1 to 4, it would only be 1 to 3.
Let's ask Chuck, I don't know which is,
That should be 3.
you want to change it to 3
Well,
or?
I think the bylaw says with a combined driveway flare area of 5 feet divided on each side of the driveways as needed. And a curb return, if applicable, no more than 3 feet. I mean, we just need to go with the bylaw says, we just.
I would agree, unless there's a special permit. All right, so we have here, so there's a couple of criteria there, design, number of curb cuts, width. So I would suggest that if we need this graph, I got very confused by this graph, it should be as an appendix or at the end, not break up the criteria. But the criteria should be numbered as Christina Lucio has suggested. Any objections to the MAAB, Mass and DPW standards? Yeah.
It
Are
is,
you suggesting the sketch goes to the application or just moves to the end of
Move
it?
so that we put the criteria all together and it doesn't break up the criteria.
Okay, but still leave the sketch in.
I'll reserve
Okay.
comment on that. I don't know.
Does
Ask
Lisa
Chuck.
know that?
She has some comments.
I'll just say,
yeah, so the criteria text is referring to the diagram. That's where the 1 and 4 feet shown in the following diagrams.
Yeah.
And you can see the flare
Mhm.
of the driveway is shown sometimes as a 4-foot flare and sometimes as a 1-foot flare. And that's gonna be depending on space constraints. So I think that a sketch may be useful here, but this would be another place where we could ask Chuck, is this current? Does this meet your standards? And
Does this help?
should we include it?
Okay. And the next question is Laura, is that correct? MAAB, ADA and DPW standards? I don't know if the DPW has any standards. Oh, they probably do.
Oh, well, that might be that sketch.
Okay.
So one thing I know we're just trying to notice and comment on town council, but who's responsible for repairing the sidewalk?
what? For what?
Repairing.
the sidewalk.
That's not our, I would think. If the owner just breaks it up while he's putting in this thing, he is, but if it's wear and tear from weather or something, I think the town is. If it's town land.
I think I'm responding both to the MAB, ADA and DPW standards and to Ms. Delicio's comment, which is a sidewalk is in the purview of DPW, so DPW is gonna have standards for who, for the profile, you know, the, how much asphalt, how much bearing course, how much subgrade, all that good stuff, right? So that it is appropriate to the level of traffic. When the driveway goes through a sidewalk, then the sidewalk is disturbed and the applicant is responsible for returning it to the sidewalk to the condition for DPW standards. And also meeting MAB for cross slopes and that kind of thing.
Don't see that anywhere, that's all. So I feel like the last one that we denied and then it was approved by the ZBA. The DPW did that. I'm just making sure that we're not putting more expense on the town for people requesting things. That's. We didn't address it at all, that's all.
Any-
I think it's in that same bullet, all sidewalks and street damage shall be replaced using the same materials and dimensions. These are all requirements of that applicant. But we could. I mean, we could go back up to the top and say the following criteria have been met by the applicant. I think that's understood, but. There's a
So
question.
this
about
is
who's
the
responsible.
criteria of the application. The driveway shall not approve an application for driveway entrances unless all the following criteria have been met. So this is just for the application. The application demonstrates these things. Whether or not they get constructed is another matter.
Right,
But the applicant is agreeing.
Agreeing, right. Okay, why don't
Using
we-
the same materials and dimensions as
We're gonna-
directed by the DPW. and that's
So I think there's like a,
clear.
maybe we can ask Chuck how to. I think we may need a second read on this, obviously. But, maybe we can keep that one on, how to, performance is the question, right? How do we ensure performance? Location, it looks like he did some formatting, but the 5 feet from the side. From any lot line. Is consistent with the general bylaw, 5 feet from sideline, it's from, oh, this says from side lot lines. Is in the general bylaw. I'm reading it right here, 10 feet from the nearest driveway entrance, fire hydrant, 5 feet from side lot lines,
he's striking side or rear lot line.
yeah.
So we'd have to put that back in, side lot line.
He just
Is
said
there any
any,
reason that would
he's
be by
expanding it.
a rear lot line?
You know, why would it be the rear?
Oh, it can be in the rear.
Ron?
Are you still on location?
Yep.
So,
Modification. So he struck side or rear, and the general bylaw just says side. So I think we have to just put in side and take out
oh, I see.
utility poles and street fixtures, hydrants. He's just made it consistent with general bylaw.
And the last sentence. You know, they name specific things, I would add, or anything, or any other object that hinders sight distance. They,
Yeah.
it may not be a fence or a wall, it may be something else, I don't know.
I agree. I mean, yeah,
To make it
A little more general.
A little more general than these specific items,
Indicate proposation of,
or any other
just
object that,
other,
that
yeah.
hinders sight distance.
is everybody okay with that, of other
Yes.
items or other?
That way you
Fixtures.
can say, hey, no, we never said that.
I'm okay with that. I'm just questioning, we're not so open in the bylaw. We say trees, utility poles, or streetlight fixtures, period.
You can,
So I don't know. Perhaps if we have to update the general bylaw or other things, that we have to make it a more general statement like you're saying.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. If you update this, I would make it more,
So what are the things in the bylaw, Mary? It just lists, trees, utility poles, or streetlight fixtures.
but then it says driveway entrances should be designed to maximize visibility in all directions. So I would think that if there are other fixtures that
That would be.
hinder lines of sight, those should be shown. And that's not inconsistent.
I agree with that.
So, okay, so, he says we have to strike the maximum length. And the minimum length,
Go back to the
oh,
previous
fixture,
paragraph.
sorry.
The side or rear lot lines striking, I don't I know our general bylaw says 5 feet from side lot lines, he's striking. He's just calling it any lot line. Is there anything in our other general bylaws which would allow you to put the driveway on the lot line? I don't think there is, so I think that the setbacks would require that you not put your driveway at the property line. So I think
There
that
was
the
an issue
intent
there.
of crossing outside of rear lot lines is correct, just saying lot lines.
So I think he's expanding the definition, right?
I think I agree, and I think that's in alignment with what the zoning.
So then if you go over to the zoning bylaws. In setbacks for driveways and parking, it says. Within 5 feet of any property line, so I think that's consistent.
So we had an issue with a curb cut way back in the day where the house was in the village. And the only way to get the driveway in was right on the property line, so
Special permit.
Special permit.
the curb cut at the time.
So I think that's a good question, though.
Because
If
the
it's-
woman couldn't get it. It was the only way to get her car into the backyard.
So was the house existing?
Yeah, it was, the houses are on top of each other.
Did she have a curb cut then?
No, she was getting a new one. I don't know. But, well,
I think it does it, scratch side or rear.
Yeah.
And it's in alignment with the rest of the zoning, and if it's, there are always gonna be exceptions, and those will come for a special permit
Or variance.
or a variance.
Okay, and then he allowed grade to stay, even though I think grade is not in the,
It is in here.
it's in the bylaw,
Well,
in the
it's
general
in,
bylaw.
it's in compliance with the sketch, if we permit the sketch, and it's in, and it, when we're saying MAB and ADA references, that's in reference to grade, so grade is part of the jurisdiction of this.
Okay, well, he's allows it, and and that remains 20 feet from the nearest intersection. That's fine,
And Ron,
materials,
does the 6% and 9%?
you know, I think it's okay. I mean, I've seen 10%.
that's pretty steep.
Yeah, but I think that's fine. I mean, we do have some. Dock in town, so.
And Ron, man.
it's-
And the reason why I think it's important to leave the sketch or have Chuck review it is because if you only read that 6% or 9%. There's a driveway I can think of on Pine Street that meets the road, including the sidewalk, that meets the road at probably 6 to 9%. It's hazardous to walk on, you can't walk on in the winter, but if you look at this sketch, it's showing that. Look, if you look at the bottom sketch in that drawing. That first 3 feet is where you can have that slope of 6 to 9%, and then the next. Right away, where it says 1.5 or 1.6% max. That is compliant with MAB and ADA, where you have to have. Less than a 2% cross slope in order for it to be. Navigable safely. And by wheelchairs, so I don't take issue with the 6 to 9%, but I think the clarification of the sketch is required. To show the intent of the. Less than 2% crosswalk.
Ron,
So,
Maybe that part could be cut up to underneath.
can we go back to the minimum length of the driveway? Maximum, I have no trouble with striking that. Minimum, if you have a driveway that's less than 10 feet, your car's gonna hang out over the sidewalk. I think it's a safety issue.
So Ron,
That's why you struck that.
town council's comments is that this is regulations for driveway entrances, not driveways.
Agreed, but
So maybe it's covered somewhere else.
I think it's a safety issue if your
What-
car is blocking the sidewalk.
so that's another comment that I have. We talk about materials of driveways in here a few times, so. I was just waiting to address the town council comments first.
So I guess the question would be, does zoning. Parking, if you're gonna park in your driveway, is the dimensions of a parking space, what would then prevail? Take over, once you're off the driveway entrance, you're in a parking space. which I think we do define the dimensions of.
Yeah, you wouldn't have enough setback.
So we'd have to, and you would be a.
I guess that's right.
So one way to do that is driveway minimum length. Should maybe just a note, see. Parking, note to applicant, parking, see also parking requirements, or something like that. Parking dimensional requirements, minimums. So,
I think there's a
Give it
bylaw
up.
about overhanging onto the sidewalk
Yeah.
somewhere. I think it's covered somewhere, but I can't.
got two comments. Laura and Mary both have comments.
About parking, Penny.
I would say, I propose we just strike it and not worry about referencing other things and sort of muddying the waters here. I agree that if the house is set that close to the street, then you're gonna have setback issues. I think that'll cover it. And the building inspector and the DPW will see it, and they will recognize safety issues. So I think I would say it's cleaner to stay away from the length because it does not relate to the entrance. I take your point. I just think it doesn't belong in the regulation here.
So we're
I think
still,
Ms. Foley had a comment.
Yes, Ms. Foley.
So I might hold off and just do it when I do my comments, but actually looking back at our old bylaws, where we combine driveways and curb cuts, so we got some of this stuff in there and then we no longer have it, but it's an overarching question about where are we addressing common driveways, which we used to in the bylaw, but I don't think we do anymore. And who's regulating the off-street parking, but that's for a different.
so
You.
on this one, the grade. So I guess my comment here, so my notes, is that the driveway shall drain water away from the street by use of drains, but it doesn't talk about adjacent properties. So drainage onto adjacent properties is okay, but just not the street. Doesn't seem, I mean, we did look for that when we used to do inspections. Where's the water going? Seems like this is a free-for-all.
I think you'd have to have some kind of engineering study on how much runoff there would be and going to someone else's property. I mean, that might be
Well, when I,
overbearing for no, but
yeah, but when I say, design of curb and driveway shall drain water away from street and neighboring properties.
Yeah, it seems covered.
just tell you.
Where?
In the general
Section
regulation,
See?
under C.
So where?
Let's see, hold on a second, I just had it. Okay, under C, line 3, driveway entrances should be designed to maximize visibility in all directions and to minimize the flow of water onto the public way and adjacent properties.
Where's
Let's
the?
just, this is in the general
The
bylaw.
general bylaw.
So why don't we insert that?
Well, again, I think you're being redundant with what's
Well, but-
already in the general bylaw. But
But if it says we're gonna drain it from the street, why wouldn't we also say adjacent properties?
So drain water away from the street and adjacent properties.
sorry, this is a technical thing, but I think the public safety issue here is not draining water onto the street. And it is important to minimize flow to a neighbor's property and a butter, but that's not the same as So which is covered by minimizing the flow of water onto the public way and adjacent properties, but I don't think that's the same as using drains, gutters, or swales to direct
That's
it
true.
away.
That's true.
That is really a little more,
Yeah.
um,
Although I have seen
channelized.
people put in rain gardens and.
yeah, so there are lots of ways to technically solve the problem.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be, the general bylaw says you gotta minimize putting it on your neighbor's property. It has to be submitted by a professional engineer, and the public health and safety matter here, I think, is you can't push your water onto public right of ways.
Well, if you're pushing, I'm sorry.
I don't disagree with
No,
the,
I bet
Yeah.
it's you're pushing water into someone else's driveway. I mean, it's.
I think that's, onto someone else's property. Sorry, I didn't mean to not go through the chair. My only point was, I think the, public safety, what's intended by the public safety is that drains and gutters and swales, the intent of them is to keep the streets and sidewalks safe for travel. Stop.
But arguably, if you have two neighbors and you're pushing the water onto those two neighbors' driveways or their sidewalks or something, and then their safety is, that ice up, you could argue that, maybe that is the public, I think includes your neighbors.
Try to fun.
Yeah.
I don't mean to take it back and forth out of this. So there is a distance required between two driveways because they both have to have a minimum 5-foot setback. So you're not putting it directly on their driveways. I am in no way saying it's a good practice or a good neighbor to push your water onto the neighboring properties, but I think where you're required a professional engineer to submit a plan, that's engineering good practice. You're not going to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, if we all feel better about adjacent properties, I think that's fine. I just think that the intent here from a public safety standpoint is keeping the directed flow of waters off of sidewalks and streets for safety of vehicles and pedestrians. And it's a little different for neighbors. I think we're all, I would say that we're all on the same page about let's not push water onto our neighbor's property. So if we think that's covering our bases better, then at the end of the day, it seems fine. I guess I was just trying to sort of dice hairs a little bit, split hairs on the technical reasoning. But not a hill I'm prepared to die on, so whatever the board thinks is the right way to go here.
I think adding adjacent properties makes sense, just because they, some of these are close and it reminds the DPW person who goes and looks at this, that they should look at it.
Maybe we shouldn't say use of drains, gutters and swales. Maybe we should have its own sentence.
Yeah. I think it's on
Well,
Maybe pull that part out.
I will say, this is a bullet that the council didn't even comment on. That's how we just spent the last 10 minutes on it. With adjacent properties and leaving it alone at that.
Can I,
It's only.
so commenting on this one grade, but then also town council's comment above and comment below, and I get confused. So he comments on one saying, these are regulating driveway entrances, not driveways. Yet grade says the design of the curb cut and driveway shall drain away. And then and I know we're not talking about it right now, but the applications, you're putting on, because we're thinking throwback to how it was with the planning board, we're doing impervious and pervious surfaces, because we're concerned about, ground cover and are they gonna need a recharge system and all that kind of stuff. This is curb cuts and driveways. I mean, I don't know how we're gonna get around that. And, I think towns that have the DPW do this, they do the curb cut. I don't know if they're also doing driveways or not, but I guess I'm just saying, like, we are being very well inconsistent throughout this document, and then the application, and then I just don't know how we get around having a curb cut reviewed and they're not looking at the driveway. And if they're not looking at the driveway, who's looking at the driveway?
Yeah, so maybe we should have a special driveway section, but this is just covered.
Mary, did we say this a few
Am
months
I-
ago? Did we bring this up?
Well, I.
When we voted 5-2? Just curious.
We did, but not, I guess not, but. But does that make sense? I mean, I don't know how. I mean, if you're doing a curb cut for a driveway, you're not just doing a curb cut, and so,
Well, back in the day when we were going on site visits, it was only safety and drainage. That's all we cared about. We didn't really get into the weeds on the driveway.
not even the impervious.
The impervious we lined.
No, we did. We did the
I mean,
impervious.
since I've been on,
Ms. Tenney.
So both the building inspector and the DPW are gonna get this application. Is it part of the building inspector's purview to look at the overall pervious, impervious balance on the site, to make sure it's in compliance with zoning?
Yes.
And if that's the case, we can be silent on it here.
Building inspector needs to come on in because my recollection is that he says he has nothing to do with driveways because that's not building.
DPW. Go ahead.
I think the building inspector is the enforcement of zoning, and zoning, I'm looking at it, requires at least certain parking requirements, which is arguably part of driveways, maybe not driveways per se, but
I mean, we're missing a few things. We're missing like lot coverage with pervious or non-pervious, and then also curb cuts that are in the water resource overlay district. Those are even more stringent. Just,
We're getting away from the driveway entrance.
yeah, let's at least try to go, maybe we need to just keep going through this, and then if we have identified omissions that we should take up, then we should take them up. Right? So,
Yeah, let's get through this document before,
yeah. The material driveways should be constructed of asphalt, concrete. He just says, well, basically all we do in the general bylaws say use of pervious materials is encouraged. And to Mary's point, he's allowing this in driveway, so let's go with it. You can strike it. Any comments on the edit that he made on materials?
It's okay.
I mean, I agree with it. It's not consistent, but I agree with it.
I think he said it's, in my opinion, this is outside the scope of the board's authorities. I think to me, we almost just scratch it.
Right, isn't that what we're doing? We're accepting his strikeout.
Right. Okay.
I guess I'm not sure we need materials at all.
Okay, let's go to application process. Lots of comments. Everything is highlighted. So.
And I don't really want to move on too much from the materials because now this opens up a pervious, impervious conversation that this leaves it kind of open. I feel like if we take out materials, then you need to go back to the bylaw and address pervious, but this says we encourage impervious, but
This is what the bylaw says. This is what the general bylaw says. It says the use of pervious materials is encouraged.
but I feel like we're now not addressing our lot coverage. I feel like it's opening up a bag of worms because the bylaw says we encourage this, but there's certain situations where someone might be moving a driveway and want something, but encouraging someone to use impervious is different than what our regulations state for lot coverage. So I think it's very unclear.
Mr. Chairman.
Well. Great.
I think that the groundwater, the ground and surface water overlay protection district does have requirements for applications of, that would cover, driveways,
It's just not
separate from this.
It's all the districts. It's just groundwater. There's lot coverage.
Right?
But this doesn't negate lot coverage. It
Right.
still applies.
I agree, but I feel like this language, when you say the use of pervious materials is encouraged.
Pervious, not impervious.
Pervious.
I just said that, yeah.
But
But it doesn't say it's required, or it doesn't reference to the bylaws where they should look at the lot coverage to make sure that they're over it. I just feel like this is a fluffy section. And I'm not sure we even need it. Is my point. I feel like we're opening a can of worms saying materials in general.
It's great.
I feel like that there should be like a kind of a bulleted list in general terms of other requirements that affect driveways, which is parking requirements, watershed protection requirements, the overlay district, as sort of in the application requirements. Applicants are, advised to also consult, at least in the absence of any modifications to the zoning or the general bylaws, that we could do that. We can, because that's where it kicks in, is in the watershed overlay district. So, I mean, we don't have any other, I'm not sure we have another tool. No, that's fine.
Ms. Tenney,
So for this one, we've done
Right.
great so far.
Right, let's
With
keep going.
consensus, maybe we could circle this one, since a
Yeah.
board member has questions on it, come back to this section. And see if we can get through the rest of the comments. So circle the materials paragraph
Mhm.
and keep moving.
no, we
Yes,
left it
not
in,
accepted.
Thinks it's outside the story, so.
Right, so not accepted until we come back and
I-
revisit. Could we go to application process?
So he comments that this is inconsistent with the first paragraph, which I think we're gonna consolidate. So maybe we can just kind of say. I mean, who does it get submitted to? And
I think it should
It
get
gets
submitted to the
submitted
DPW.
And building inspector, pardon me. That's what we said.
with a copy to the
Why
plan.
the building inspector?
I think it makes sense. They should talk to each other. And the reason being is, that's, Yeah.
All right. Ms. Tenney,
Building inspector and DPW, because that's what it says on page 1 in the 2 paragraphs that we're trying to consolidate. That's the only reason it's in there. We seem to like it. Let's keep it.
okay,
So the only reason I was gonna say the clerk is because I just don't feel like. Not just, we're a small town, but just to keep files in one place, the town clerk, and we have this new online software, so maybe we should just figure out where. I think there is a button for the curb cuts right now, so I'm not sure where that goes and who it goes to, but I do feel like we need to do a better job at. Keeping records, and I feel like if the town clerk is the person who can keep the records per address, I don't know if we need DPW. I just feel like wherever everything, something can be in one place is where it should be submitted.
makes sense.
Yes, we,
Ms. Foley first.
So the next sentence down, has stricken building inspector and town planner, so. I guess I don't know why it would go to the building inspector if it's a curb cut, so I guess I agree with Ms. Delicio that. The one source should be the town clerk and she disperses to the appropriate. Department, she has to keep it on file anyway, right? Town clerk. Doesn't she stamp it and receive it?
I think so. Ms. Tenney, I don't know.
So I think Ms. Delicio and Ms. Foley are right. And the application process states, number 1, the property owner submits the application for driveway entrance to the town clerk.
Mhm.
Number 2, then the town clerk submits it to whomever we define, who have the jurisdiction to review. So I think the town clerk's taking part of the administrative piece. And then they submit it to the appropriate jurisdiction and we'll decide who that is.
well, if it's online, does it go to the town clerk that way?
Let's assume it does.
Is it what?
The online application,
well, they can go wherever somebody tells it to go.
So then the application should be on the website online as the town clerk's, subsection of the
Right.
town clerk's. Jurisdiction, but then how does she know who to send it to?
Tell
Ms.
her.
Tenney,
We're telling her here who's gonna have jurisdiction over it, and I think
so he struck the building inspector. from-
so we're gonna talk about who has jurisdiction. As far as the admin part, I think that this regulation states what it needs to, which is it goes to the town clerk. And the town clerk pushes it to whomever. And as far as all the back of house stuff, where the website goes, who's doing what, not part of this regulation. Mr. Fetterspiel and his staff will solve that.
Okay,
Does that make sense, Greg, for it to go to the town clerk? Excuse me.
I think that's a fine process and we can take it from there.
Okay,
all right, so then we're striking out, all of this, right?
No,
Number two.
no, okay.
Who's just commenting?
I think we asked Chuck how he wants to handle it. I think
So
Well,
this is saying that it's reviewed by, but this is, but it seems to me that there's two pieces. One is it's reviewed by the DPW. And the other is it's given to the building inspector, the town planner and the planning board perhaps as a matter of interest. You know, that might be a process that is, you know, at least the building inspector. Cause it seems to me that these things are related. The building inspector, that's where somebody's going to go if they're going to build something. They go to the building inspector. And the building inspector could say, oh, I don't think you've got a curb cut yet. Curb cut application, go online, it will go to the town clerk and then it gets reviewed by the DPW. And if you don't meet the criteria, it gets reviewed by the special permit.
And in fact, the building inspector is going to check for lots of region,
Right.
previous services, so you have to get a.
Right.
He has to get a copy of the application.
You should get a copy for his,
He has to make sure it complies with zoning.
right,
Ms. Khaleesi.
I think we used to get copies of all the ZBA decisions back in the day. I feel like some of these practices,
So much copies.
I think it's important to see what it's, when you read it, your mind's triggered for things that come up in the future. So I do think maybe it's,
Well, we tried to get this off of our plate, now it's coming back to our plate. And,
well, if it does, I mean, if it does eventually come to our plate, we'll have knowledge of it. So we'll see why it came to our plate and we can follow it. I mean,
but not everyone's gonna come to us, so, but if the board wants to do that, Ms. Tenney?
Number two, where he struck building inspector, town planner, sorry. Did you? And left DPW, I think the clarity, seems to be the clarity that's there, that's
Reviewing it.
required is whose jurisdiction is it really? Because if everybody's copied on it, but we don't state who the jurisdiction belongs to, then
you reviewed by
nobody's
the DPW.
responsible. Yeah, so if DPW is reviewer, and then we can copy the building inspector, which kind of reverses what we said on paragraph 1, page 1. In that case, it said copies, but it said submitted to building inspector, then copied to DPW, but now it's going to the
Alignment.
town clerk. The DPW has jurisdiction, that's what we said. Applicability, general laws, all new and relocated driveway entrances for all land uses shall require a permit issued by DPW. So they are the permit issuing authority
Mhm.
in this case. I don't know that we've answered the question yet about who's gonna check
Who
for,
gets copies, yeah.
who gets copies and who's checking for impervious coverage and those kinds of things. But, more clarity would help here. I think the DPW is the permit granting authority here. I, for one, do not want to be copied. I don't think it's useful for the planning board to be copied on a DPW permit granting authority because again, it's not.
What are we gonna do about it?
We have no jurisdiction here.
They post them in, on applications and you can look at it. They post building permits.
So the number 3 does say that Department of Public Works may consider comments from town officials and neighbors in its review. Which gives some, he sort of says that's okay, you can kind of give this administrative review. He seems to sort of allow that, sort of a little bit of wiggle room and town flexibility in this, in number 4. So.
So I think it's 3. I'm sorry.
So he sort of allows some flexibility and some other review. So. Right.
Not opposed to that. Ms. Delacio?
The Department of Public Works may consider comments from town officials and neighbors in this review. Right, they may consider them, but how would neighbors even know? Because we've taken out any kind of notice. So I think it's a very rhetorical question.
Would we ask them to post it somewhere?
Maybe they post them like they post, permits, like the building inspector posts permits.
Well, that's another thing. It used to be in the newspaper every week and they're
That's 'cause
not.
it was a
anymore.
hearing.
No,
It's
they
like,
still-
it was a posted meeting. That's what it was.
no, the building is, all the permits used to be listed in the paper.
They're on the website now.
We could have the DPW give, well, no, that would be.
But in the case of a DPW approved curb driveway entrance, it meets certain criteria or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, I mean, then it comes for a special permit and neighbors then have, there is the sort of the more of a nuanced look at things. But if it meets the criteria, regardless of whether the neighbor thinks it should or shouldn't happen, it's 5 feet from the lot line and whatever it is, then it seems to me it's either a yes or a no. The criteria are yes or no criteria. And therefore, while neighbors may have a objection to it or a, it's kind of a, and I think we've all seen that, right? Where neighbors have an objection to what I would say is, I can think of one which met all of these criteria despite and a lot of times the neighbors' objections are actually not to the curb cut application, it's to some other thing. It's to the fence or
My point is maybe we should just take this out, right?
the neighbor piece.
Yes,
Yeah.
that needs to get reworked regardless.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you're right.
I actually agree they should be taken out.
But town officials,
Even town officials, why,
right, yeah, right, I agree.
But I do feel like maybe they need to post it somewhere. They need some kind of a notice. Application process, sorry.
And we would have input if it was a special permit from the neighbor.
Right.
Absolutely right.
So we're not losing,
Right, that's in the DPW.
right.
And should we strike town planner in number 3 as well?
So I feel like, I'm sorry, the DPW may consider comments from town officials, but so I feel like if the Chuck wants to lean on
Well,
Paul or experience of the planning board, I don't feel like we need, if he may consider, so if he reaches out and asks a question, I don't feel like we should take that out, but I feel like the neighbor part is just doesn't make any sense because we don't allow a mechanism to be notified.
May I respond? Okay, that's fine.
I am on board with taking out that sentence, and I think it's fine, in my opinion, to take out town officials, because we're not, by taking it out, we're not disallowing him from
Right.
talking to Paul or anybody else. In the course of his normal business, he talks to other town officials.
Right.
And so he's gonna go about the course of his normal business, and if he thinks he needs to consult with the building inspector or anybody else, he'll do it. And we don't need to explicitly grant him permission to do that.
okay. Makes sense. I'm,
Okay,
well, either way, we can be brought in, if he wants to. Or, okay.
okay, number 4 is 30 days. He says we can give them more flexibility. So I think we asked Chuck about what the 30 days is enough.
Lots of Chuck questions.
No, it's not that big.
Well, it's gonna be his role.
And then number 5 and number 6 should be indented, so just but he struck the building inspector for the same reasons before, so we can't hold up a building permit or a certificate of completion.
So we call it a permit some places and this is, we call it approval, so I just feel like we need to be consistent.
Okay, good question, good.
What's the penalty if we go to a driveway, it's already in?
Well,
It happened before.
the
$50 a day.
$50 a day after you're told about it. So.
Ron?
Penny?
May I come back to items 2 and 3, because item 2 struck town planner, and item 3 leaves it in. We haven't discussed any need for a town planner here, this DPW's regular business here. Can we
I thought we said-
eliminate, we delete town planner, we didn't explicitly say, can we delete it?
I think we should delete it in number 3.
Yeah, and number 2,
Yes.
just wanted to make sure.
Well, because the general bylaw gives the authority to the DPW.
I agree, and I just want, yeah, I was raising it to make sure that we
Yeah, I already struck it.
explicitly struck that.
And on number 3, didn't we say the site visit could come in the middle, the end, or the beginning, or?
Yeah.
DPW's
Chuck,
discretion,
Check. Yeah.
that's Chuck.
But we should take it out of the first page altogether,
Hmm,
because it's now here in this one.
hmm,
We don't need it in 2 places.
where was it?
I guess we're gonna talk to Chuck, but how do you do a site visit in the middle of construction to determine if the location is appropriate? Like that doesn't,
It complies with the plan.
no, that's not what this sentence is stating now.
Where are you in front?
Three.
Restrict the site visit to prior to any work? Is that what you're saying?
Well, to see if the location to determine if the application and proposed entrance complies with the criteria. So, I mean, unless you do it beforehand, it doesn't make any sense to do it afterwards. I mean,
That's implicit, but yeah.
well, we were
It
just,
doesn't say anything about construction in this paragraph.
so when would you do it? The point is, if you don't do it before, when would you do it?
Penny?
Right now, our application says at the beginning,
Mhm.
at substantial completion, some other times, it's all over the map. So my feeling is a site visit at the discretion of DPW is the right way to do, and let's ask Chuck, when's the right time? And it might be different from one project to another. He might want to go back and see something that's a little tricky in construction and make sure it's going, you know, he might do
Or a neighbor
it
calls
twice.
you, or
Or a neighbor calls you and you go over and see it, whatever, and he might do one in the beginning. So I think, I'm comfortable with asking Chuck the question and saying,
Yeah.
seeing what he says about when he needs to go.
He's got the plan, he knows where it's going, the
Yeah.
location, so he can say, hey, you didn't do this to the plan at the end. Cut it out, you have to do it over.
Yeah,
Or-
I think this is just being a little
Make it right.
prescriptive about saying when that site visit has to happen. Because to your point, at substantial completion, it's kind of too late if that's the first time he feels like he needs a site visit. Unless he was really checking the engineering, you know, to be in compliance because of slopes or something, but otherwise, if he's trying to get the lay of the land and he's going there before anything happens while it's still on paper. We'll have to ask him what he thinks.
Yeah.
And leave it more open-ended.
Okay. So number 5 basically says that the DPW issues a special permit or says. And then, and does an inspection, so it's sort of the same. Issue. There's no stick if it's. Not constructed as designed, but.
Isn't.
Is there a stick?
I think it's the same stick that there's
Same
always,
stick.
something's not built to compliance, the town can require that it be.
Failure to
corrected.
comply with bylaw. Okay. And then if the application is denied, you can appeal to the planning board.
Ron, can I just ask a question? On 5. Or on 6. There could be an instance when somebody knows they're not gonna be in compliance for a DPW curb cut and they wanna go right to the planning board. Why do we have different fees?
Why do we have different fees?
So the DPW is $100 and planning board is 75.
I think the 75 is an appeal.
That's an additional 75 to the 100, I think, no?
So what's the fee if you go right to the planning board?
We haven't gotten there yet.
all
I
right.
agree with you.
We're more expensive, gotta pay 7 people off.
So I guess I would maybe clarify in that sentence that, you know, may apply for an appeal special permit or something. I don't know. This just says may apply for special permit, so.
So maybe we need a 7, applicants who cannot meet the above criteria should apply directly to the planning board. You know, they could skip the DPW step. Something about applications can go directly to the planning board.
And is that $100?
Sure. But I don't know, Laura,
Why should we let anybody skip the DPW review? Isn't it?
if I know that I'm not gonna meet the criteria.
Well,
You
I
need
want
to be
two, I
within
want
5
2
feet.
entrances.
Why shouldn't you go through the process of having DPW review to see if you can comply? Versus making an exception before you even start?
They'd have to pay 2 $100 fees.
No, if it's not about the fees, I think it's, you're saying.
I'm saying follow the
Follow
process.
the,
Right.
follow the process.
think
I
Ron-
guess the question would be if I think I can't. Make it, the only place to put it is a big boulder. I can't put it. 5 feet from the lot line.
But that's a
whatever.
minimum.
If I can only put it 4 feet from the lot line because there's a
Yeah.
giant rock.
I still think it's gotta go through the process. The DPW is gonna look at it and he might say, yeah, actually you can make it 5 feet. Or he might say, yeah, you're really stuck here, take it to the planning board. I think the DPW is our first review.
So, okay.
I would comment to that, to me, it confuses the process because then that could be tied up. Hopefully the DPW would do that quickly, but that, we give them 30 days to decide, and then they have to apply for a special permit, which we'll look at those timeframes later, because those timeframes seem quite long to me, but it could be extending the process and then saying you're gonna have to pay 175 for the curb cut that 2 months ago would have been $100, right? Like it, to me, it just seems like we're double dipping in fees
Right.
that doesn't really seem small town friendly to me.
I don't know why we would need another fee. The appeal.
We're not talking about the special permit here, but if we want to, in the special permit, say you've already been through the process, your fee is waived, or maybe there is another administrative town, cost to the town, because none of this costs nothing, right? We have
Right.
town salaries to pay. This is not about dinging people. So, I still think the process is you go through DPW, you prove that you either comply with it or you really can't comply, and then you gotta go to planning board, and we'll figure out the fees without unnecessarily dinging people, but being responsive to the fact that there are administrative costs that the town bears.
What?
I guess I see your point, but if we're asking engineers to come up with the plans and they're saying they can't come up with it, we're butting heads with 2 engineers, right? So now we're saying well, your engineer is better than my engineer, and perhaps the engineer is saying, let's just go to this. This is the best we could do. I'm just saying there could be certain circumstances that they need to go straight to the.
I don't disagree. I think then you have a conversation with DPW before it ever gets to the planning board and say, look, I got this site plan I'm gonna submit. Can you come out and look at my site here? This is where I wanna put my driveway. Can you please come and do a site walk before I submit my application? If the DPW says like, this is not gonna work, you gotta go to the planning board, then we can figure out how that works.
So you're saying someone knows he's non-compliant, would just get a conversation with the planning, with the DPW,
Yeah.
then submit for special
Yeah.
permit? Without
Yes,
submitting
but-
to the DPW officially, is that what you're saying?
I guess I'm not trying to get all of that into this document. I'm trying to set up the standard process, which is DPW is our engineer.
Well, and when I looked at the application,
Yeah.
I suggested one application for any of these. We need to just streamline them,
Mhm.
refer to the regulations or put the application requirements in the application, whichever. And then I suggested a second and another box. It's approved, approved with attached conditions, denied. And then referred to planning board for special permit as another box on
Yeah.
not the application, the decision. So that if, once the application is, and then there's not another application, they keep the same application, one application. And then the decision is referred to the planning board. And I don't even think we need any of that stuff in the decision, strike all that and because it's in the regulations. And any, comments could be in the approval or the denial or the,
Should we have a reason that it was denied in the
Yeah.
application? So we know why.
right, there should be a comments in the decision. But I think if we say refer to the planning board for special permit in the decision format, then it kind of.
I like that one box that says it all.
Right.
Check here.
Right,
Yeah.
so. And then,
All right, Mr.
Except I think it could be, there should be another box that says approved with conditions.
it is there,
Oh, okay.
conditions,
So then if you don't like the conditions,
right,
again, you can go.
so,
Okay, so I think that solves both problems,
yeah.
right?
right.
I think so.
Okay, so we're not gonna have a number 7, you go straight to the planning board, okay. And then at the end of the applications for special permit. I think should follow the zoning applications for a special permit and not have any of this other stuff. All these bottom things, this is we've already got an application, the application. I think we just say, so.
That all
special
of this is on the application. Is that what you're saying?
application materials for a special permit. Or. Specified in zoning.
Oh, is that what we're talking about? I thought we were saying moving that to the application form, but either way, I think it's fine. Maybe we write less if we leave it in the application, in the zoning.
So are you saying
Everybody's okay with that.
that 6.1
6 point.
or whatever it is?
6.1.3,
Those are special times.
what a special permit is, this is a special permit.
6.3. I haven't looked at these in a while. So do you know offhand, does it clarify that we need a stamped professional, by professionals, that it's stamped architect, certified engineer? Does it talk about location of hydrants and trees and all that? I just don't know that 6.3 goes in that detail for curb cuts.
Well, there is a provision that
Lighting
the planning
standard,
board
noise.
can waive requirements. This is an example. Of perhaps where 6.3.14 would waive. Waiver of standards, we may, in the course of granting a special permit, waive any of the performance standards. And I would argue you could waive the application materials.
Why would we want to do that?
Well, I don't know if you need a lighting plan and a traffic study and.
I think there's an easier answer.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Page 1, we said with your standard curb cut application, you have to do proposed topography, location of lights, trees, fixtures. You've already done all that.
Right,
So you're gonna submit the same materials for the
Right.
special permit. You don't need to restate them any differently. It's the same materials plus anything extra that
Right,
we
okay.
want to call for.
So my,
Special permit.
my question was that Does it say on page one that
No.
we, but this is, yeah, that's what. That's
That's what you had said earlier.
Well, we were just going through the lawyer's comments. So
Right.
there's still a few things to pick up, but
Well, no, because
It doesn't
Ms.
say.
Creighton just said that she wanted to remove all the application materials for special permit. And
Oh,
I
I
said,
stand corrected, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
so we either keep it here or it's just on the application, which I think a lot of it's on the
I
application.
like it on the application, but that on the application is nicely written. So where is the current application? It's different than what's on our site, I guess. Correct.
Correct. It's this paper version.
And then where did you get that?
This was in the approved regulation, in June, this mess.
Oh, it's not on the application, so. we have to
Not on
have
the app, it's not on that application, but it's on the other
old
one,
one.
yeah. So we need to merge the two applications. If that's. I'll do that. Or. With Mary.
My third rodeo, no, no, no. No.
Performance?
Okay. So can I, Mr. Chairman?
Sorry,
I'm gonna suggest that we have made significant progress here by going through KP Law's comments and a few other things. I'll volunteer to try to decipher this and put it in a something for a second read. Maybe with Laura.
I can help with that.
And
so could you bullet some things on the side where we need Chuck's
Yeah.
opinion and maybe get him in here next month?
Yeah.
If we could do that next month.
Yeah. I think we've got a good start, and I think that with the comments for typos and other things that we can address those at the same time. I don't know if there are any others important substantive things. I think we talked about them. So that's just my proposal. So.
Okay.
I volunteer to help Sarah, and I think the one, just to kind of sum up where we left off, I think we had one open further discussion on the materials paragraph. Everything else we got agreement to. It would be good to do this in a Word document, so we'll have the track changes from KP Law, and then we'll have our different color track changes. And everyone
Would you
will
do-
follow along. I
Would
don't want
you
a
do
PDF
clean
comment.
version, not just
Yeah, we'll do a simple markup.
Yeah.
track version?
Yeah, I just want to make sure
We
we've
don't
got
need
the
to
track.
see the KP law anymore, do we? I think we have it on
We have it on,
a.
No, I think we'll do a
Just
track
save it
changes
as a-
with both merged. And then we'll save it as a simple markup as well.
Yeah,
With a track change.
So people can see both.
people want to go
changes.
back and see the sausage making, it's there, but we'll do a simple markup save.
And we'll review this in public, review the simple markup.
And then what I think I'll do is take the application that the old one. And try to merge in what this is and make it the general, the new one, and I mean,
All right, why don't you do that and then send it to us?
and I'll send it to you guys. Yes,
so we're just talking about the regulations, not the applications right now, is that correct?
but I think we should do the application.
And I agree, but I don't want changes being made that we didn't discuss tonight.
What
There's a
other
lot of
change?
people's comments that we haven't discussed yet, and so
On the application specifically,
on both. So I don't know if now's the time or we want to do other versions of this, but
Are there substantive, not typo kinds of changes, additional, that you had? 'Cause I feel like mine, at least mine got this.
So I guess Laura brought up the materials, but we also didn't address the date. So those two things are still in the document.
Date is still outstanding.
And then I have a few, I'm sorry, I felt like I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I guess I'd have to look.
Let me take a shot at the application and maybe I can take a shot and you and I can review it. And then I'll present it to the board.
Well, so yeah, but so some of the things that I had, so. For the regulations, the first line, it has to be general bylaws, not general law.
Yes.
So that's.
Yeah.
But so so many, so did we discuss the scale requirements?
We did, I think there's this overall site plan is 1 in 100, and then when you get specifically to the driveway, it's 1 in 4.
Okay, so we're consistent with that.
Make that clear.
And does publicly traveled include private roads?
I don't know, we did private roads up in, we did curb cuts up in, off of Masconomo, off of, we've done them up in that area.
Yeah, and I just asked because the document says publicly traveled. I don't know if that encompasses
I think
private.
it does, I think it should include private roads, I think we've done that in the past. You know, once you get beyond,
Yes.
spot on,
So this says all new and relocated driveway entrances for all land uses. So land uses include private roads, I would think.
Yes, I'm just saying where was it? There, it specifically says
Publicly traveled.
yeah. So I just wanted to make sure legally that encompassed private roads.
that's, we should.
I don't know if it does.
Yeah.
Actually, in your comment, you say this is in state be local. That was your,
Oh, for the general bylaws?
I'm just looking at, and you said add private in addition to publicly travel. I'm not sure publicly travel under state law does include private.
So let's figure out what our intent is, and then we can figure out how to say it. So is our intent to include public and private roads?
So do we regulate private roads?
We don't regulate private road.
We
Well,
do curb cuts with private roads.
We have in the past,
Do,
I know we have.
Have we done curb cuts for private roads entering publicly traveled ways, public roads, or
No, they're entering.
you know, curb
private
cut
roads,
onto private roads
private
that we have
roads.
done?
But, you know, they're
jurisdiction?
paved, and I think the
They're-
town
town maintains them for
and,
plowing. There are a lot of them in town. I think we should intend to do them
I think
because
we
they
should.
are about their,
I think we should, for the safety of anybody on the private road, you know, drainage and.
I think we have,
Somebody tells us we can.
I think it needs to be explicit, and I think Mary's right, add.
yeah,
private.
public and private. Okay.
oh. I forget what we changed.
So on the building department site, the curb cut application is still digital. It's been up for a year or so.
Which the building site or.
Yeah, if you go to the Manchester,
Permitting.
if you go like Manchester building, has electrical permit building, and it has a DPW.
What applications is it? It's the one that says 6.2.7?
So it's the town of Manchester by the sea, so you can choose inspectional service, fire, planning, DPW, health, and so when you go to DPW. Road opening permit is an option.
I didn't see that.
Personally, I think it,
Deactivate.
yeah, it was. But I think it should be online. I feel like it should be digital, like then you can just disseminate the information quickly to one board to another. So I feel like whatever we're doing with the application, maybe we need to check with who's behind this and make sure we can digitalize it. Because can attach the plans and all that kind of stuff here.
So that's that we first need to know what the what we're asking for, and then
We need to take this down because it's very confusing. People have been applying on this, so that's really.
I don't,
Take
I
a
think it
look
should be
at it.
current.
you're right, so.
So what's
But that's
on
not-
there now is not current.
Where did you access this from again, Christina?
If you just Googled like building permit, it brings you that. You have choices for DPW, inspections, health. Fire.
You said road opening or curb cut?
It's called road opening permit here.
Maybe that's a different thing.
I think, Miss Jenny.
So the town clerk may have a permit portal, or perhaps she'll develop a permit portal, and we can give her a suggestion to do that. In terms of, I think making this next round the most productive that we can be, perhaps we go around the room. If anybody didn't get to substantive comments, not typos, not grammatical, not formatting, that we want to hit tonight, then Sarah and I could work those into the document. If there's any energy left, we could pretty quickly just go through the forms, but maybe we do the regulations first. I just think if we can limit the number of rounds that we go through on the substantive comments, that would be to everyone's benefit.
Stover.
I was just gonna ask on Laura's point. I did not, my comments were very general, they've all been addressed, but I know that others made very detailed written comments that were in the folder, and if everyone's comments are on these documents in the folder, then perhaps Ms. Creighton and Ms. Tenney can work with those documents, unless there are additional things
Right.
that people didn't include on their written comments.
Or if any of them are policy.
And then I think Mary and I had comments on the application.
Yeah.
And so maybe I could take a first crack at it and then see. Did anyone else have comments on the application?
I have some I could give verbally quickly. You probably picked up the same things, but. I have a
Can I
couple.
clarify, so are you saying that they'll take these comments and incorporate it into the edits?
All of them?
It's just a-
Unless, yeah, or we'll identify those that are that we didn't get to tonight that are
we didn't
policy.
Get to, right.
So if,
Did we never addressed, and or maybe we did, how does a resident appeal a decision by the DPW?
it's number 6.
Number 6.
If the application is denied or the property owner disagrees with the conditions of approval, the property owner may apply for a special permit for the additional $75.
No, but what if it's not, it's not that it would go, so are you saying if somebody applies to the DPW, and the DPW denies it for, I don't know, being over and impervious or something, they then appeal to the planning board on that, or let's say, let's say, no, I'm sorry, I asked the wrong question. Erase all of that.
Okay.
How does an abutter appeal a decision that the DPW has done?
In the ZBA.
No, it's CPA.
Right, the ZBA must be.
So
Same
it
with,
would be after the word of a special permit by the planning. Then the butter can appeal it to the ZBA.
No, but what if an abutter appeals a DPW decision? So DPW does not grant a special permit, so I don't know how a non-special permit goes in front of the ZBA.
So,
Well,
so I think the answer to that is that if it complies with all the criteria and the DPW issues the permit based on the criteria, there's no appeal. They have it by right.
So this has become a by right process.
If they comply with the criteria, yes.
So through the chair, I guess I would ask, but so say the DPW puts conditions or, I'm trying to think of an example where it's, we say it has to be 12 feet, yada, 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 but there might be some other fluke, right, that I'm not thinking of right now. And a neighbor and a butter has an issue with that. Can a non-special permit be appealed to the ZBA?
I don't know the answer. Sarah, do you?
I don't know the answer, but
Maybe Greg
Mike,
has his.
maybe Greg,
Greg.
Greg knows, and wouldn't it be the
Thank you.
same as appealing a building permit?
Go ahead.
Or our prior, let's hear Greg.
So, town council, reviewed the bylaw that was approved, and the bylaw doesn't specify that appeals are to the ZBA, so absent that specificity, the appeal by an aggrieved abutter or nearby butter would be through court, through the courts, the Superior Court, just like an appeal is of a ZBA approval. So again, if you wanted to modify the general bylaw, you could specify that appeals are to the ZBA if that's what you prefer. But as the bylaw was written, it does not specify that.
Foley.
So through you asking how, so if somebody appeals a building inspector permit, does that go to Superior Court?
You want me to answer that, Rob?
Yes, say yes. Ron, say
Yeah.
yes, say yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't hear. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, so appeals of a building inspector is specified to go to the ZBA.
Specified, okay.
So we should take a look at this at some point, this bylaw.
So I think one of my comments was, how does one appeal something if you have no notice? So if we're not posting these, you're not notifying people, you can't appeal something that you're not notified of. Or there's no notice of.
This. You have it.
Do we want to create a right of appeal? Is there a need for that?
Well, that's a good point. I don't know.
Maybe there isn't.
Ms. Denny?
I feel that we're talking about procedural stuff that's not gonna go into the regulation here. And as with any other by right, where you have to comply with the requirements such as pulling a building permit, there are ways to appeal that, whether it's through the courts, as Greg said, or whether we put it into the bylaw. So we may need to take that up someday. But I think what we're charged with here is getting a regulation that's fair and clear and efficient, with a form that makes it efficient for people to file and understand the filters that it goes through. So you raising fine points. I think it would just, in terms of getting this thing through.
Well, at a minimum, this needs to be posted somewhere, like decisions need to be posted somewhere at a minimum. Applications.
May just to finish the thought, I think all of these are comments that apply to any regulation. And it's the town's business to, and we should ask the town to, you know, what is their procedure for, is there a permit portal? How do they notify people of things? That can apply to any regulation. I'm not discounting its importance, but I just think in terms of specifically what we need to do to this regulation. And when we decided we've done enough for one night that is specific to this regulation, then I think, you know, we make a note of changes that would be beneficial, and we can suggest them to the town, and the town can choose to follow up.
Okay, I think we,
I actually have a comment.
go ahead.
Just. There were comments before we got to this point, so I feel like we're dismissing things that could have been prevented 6 months ago. So I don't want to drag that up, but I think they are important because we should have potentially put something into the regulation for no, we should have addressed it either way. This is by right, or there's an appeal process. We chose to be silent, and I don't feel like we actually did the bylaw justice in that point. So I don't really appreciate it being dismissed at this point, because I don't think it is behind the scenes. I think it is a policy if we're going to not notify people.
So we can make suggestions to the general bylaw or at any time before a town meeting, so put it
No, no.
on the list of things.
The regulations where these will be posted. I feel like the procedures, and then it will be posted to this. I feel like it should be included at a minimum in this discussion in in these regulations.
I did make note that that's sort of a parking lot or a issue that we've talked about tonight but not resolved. I added that to the list. So that's at least for the moment. Along with the date, questions that are not yet
Okay, so.
resolved, maybe we can.
To Laura's point, let's try to get this,
A second.
a second bite at this, because we spent
Yeah.
2.5 hours on it, and, you know. I think the idea is good that, you and Laura work on that, then bring it up for a second, round. I think if we get it all done, I think I'll try to get Chuck or Nate here next meeting. And then I think I'll take a stab at this application, and then I'll run it by Mary, and then maybe the two of us can come up with something for everyone to look at next meeting. Well, I think that's it. You do have.
So, it's the question for Greg, that I asked before, for you, Mr. Chairman. We held a public hearing for these regulations. And we did approve them as written. Are the changes that we've been contemplating sufficient that we need another public hearing? And if so, should we just do that next meeting, because we'll be kind of at least a good way down the path in the interest of trying to get this thing so that people can use it as soon as possible, as soon as it's ready. What do you think? Does it need another public hearing?
My inclination is to say no, because you're sort of pulling back in areas rather than adding. But again, I'm happy to just confirm that with town council if you would feel more comfortable with that.
Right, well, why don't we see what the scope of the revised document is then? Okay,
Okay, thanks.
thank
And I have
you.
one more question.
Yeah. Totally.
This will help in the application as well, and it might be my own, just not thinking clearly. Why have we not stipulated that if it's in a water overlay district or the floodplain or flood control, that it would be a planning board special permit? And a driveway, which is,
We're not approving it.
I don't think we're doing driveway. That's part of the, that's zoning. Isn't it?
nobody does driveways then. We used to. This process has taken driveways out of any jurisdiction. So then, I guess I don't know why we have impervious on the application, if nobody's gonna be reviewing it. But my original question with asking about the water overlay and floodplain, assuming driveway and, we've had driveways close to wetlands, all that kind of stuff that constantly get involved with, but I don't, and maybe DPW is qualified for that. I just don't know why we wouldn't follow.
Yeah, I make a suggestion to the form editors. So I know I haven't seen the one that's online. I have the one that was in our paper packet from before. And one of my questions about that form was, this is the driveway entrance application, and on marked at page 7 in the document, but it has, is this property location within the flood control or water resources overlay protection district? Yes or no? And the question you might say is, what then? So clarifying that would be helpful, and perhaps to the question of the amount of impervious on the checklist of requirements that are among the things that the engineer is required to submit is a calculation right in the drawing that says, that that gives the calculation for the percent of impervious once the driveway and the curb cut are
Are
complete.
you talking about just in the waterway protection?
No, I'm not,
Everywhere.
well, I defer to you if, I think this is not just the water overlay, so I guess it's two questions. It's, if it's in the water overlay flood control district, so what? What does that mean? If you answer yes or no, then what? Like, where does that take you? That's question number one. And number two, I think is a separate question, is if we are wanting to ensure that the pervious impervious balance is kept in compliance with zoning requirements as part of this person who is maybe just changing their driveway entrance, or maybe they're putting in a new driveway, we don't know. But as part of that site plan submittal, like we often do with other site plan requirements, we are gonna require the calculation of the pervious impervious. Proposed, existing and proposed pervious impervious area of the site.
So if Chuck or Nate comes, I think those would be good questions for them.
Okay.
Why is it there and what do they suggest?
Yeah, it's kind of a trigger. It's sort of getting information. It's not a criteria for the driveway entrance approval or not.
But what
But
would-
it is an opportunity, a touch point to say to the applicant as in consideration for us reviewing your driveway application, we're gonna ask you this information about your general site in order to become, and then if the calculation is over the threshold, then, and you're in the watershed protection overlay district,
Right.
then you also need to do this.
So maybe,
kind of a-
so maybe it is connected 1 and 2.
It's
Two,
kind-
it's only in the watershed overlay district. I'm not sure,
Right.
you know,
I
I'd
think
have
it
to
is.
sort of.
But
maybe
it's
I'll
kind of a
think that
trigger,
through.
it's kind of an
It's a trigger,
opportunity, it's
yeah.
kind of an education, as opposed to people having to find these things all over the place. That's why I was sort of thinking a section like, as a courtesy to the applicant, please also refer to parking space requirements in the zoning and this and that and the other thing.
Greg, you have a comment?
Yeah, so I think, again, as a zoning matter, the building inspector will need that information to see if there's a zoning violation in terms of too much impervious surface area.
Right.
So that's where you get, a copy being given to the building inspector and
Right.
he makes sure that there's not an exceedance of impervious surface.
Okay, Mr. Licio, I want to end this pretty soon, but.
I have just 2 comments. So maybe the applicable sections in the zoning bylaw that when they submit the application, that they acknowledge that there is this section and they can't overbuild and they acknowledge, whatever things that we are concerned about. They just, yes, I understand, and it says the sections that they need to comply with. But also we need a parking lot for the common driveways, because that's not addressed anywhere. I just want to make sure that we're not.
Yeah, that was on so common driveways and split lots with.
Yeah. Common driveway, I don't know if that has to do with curb cuts.
Well, one curb cut is gonna serve 2 or 3 properties. I mean, where is that falling then?
As long as it complies.
It's still
Have common driveways in the zoning.
I don't think you took it out.
Okay, I think you have a plan going forward. I think we go through the subject for tonight anyway. And let's just move on to these updates and we can pretty quickly now. MBTA Communities Multifamily Zoning Districts. Mr. Only, can we get an update?
Sure, so we had a kickoff meeting with our consultant on the 16th of November. The firm is called Innis Associates, based in Newburyport. They've done a lot of work with a range of towns across the state and working on compliance issues with the MBTA zoning, as well as other zoning issues. And I would urge all of you to tune in to our meeting on this coming Thursday, because Emily Innes and her staff will be meeting with the task force to start talking about the criteria for establishing overlay districts.
What time is that meeting?
And it's at 6:30.
Great.
So we're really gonna start putting our oar in the water now.
Okay, and then at some point, I'd like to have a joint meeting with you guys and us.
Yes, yeah.
The select board needs to get involved, but I think initially,
I think it would be good to, when we start having some options to discuss, would be a good time to meet with the planning board to talk about some of the issues that we'll be coming up with.
when do you project that you might have some options?
I think, early January. The other thing is that the MIT presentations will be on December 5th, unless that changes.
December 5th,
That's, yeah,
what time is that?
that's at 6:30 also.
Huh?
Nothing more interest than anything specific.
Okay, thank you. Senior housing bylaw group,
We met, and started talking to some people who have experience with senior housing, and we had a good discussion and sort of thought about having a panel discussion about the topic to kind of help us to better understand what developers want and what's out there. And so we're in the process of identifying who might be on that panel, so. That's in the new, not next meeting.
A panel for the planning.
Planning,
board.
a planning board planning.
Yeah.
Panel, yes, so we. I think we have another meeting next Monday.
harbor management plan, any?
Our next meeting is December 18th. Our next meeting will be, talking about the sort of the boundaries of the, study. And they want to have a sort of a meeting of people to talk about their concerns for the harbor and the area, in the new year, so a public sort of, middle school, high school cafeteria style meeting with stations and, so we're sort of figuring that out. 6 o'clock is the meeting, on the 18th, and it's only on Zoom.
CPC's meeting on December 7th, December 1st is the normal deadline for all applications. That meeting is going to be reviewing the applications that they got. I will send you the applications. I'll post that in our meeting packet just for your information when it's finalized. Other liaisons or information from anyone who's met with us. Anything from anyone? Okay. ZBA did approve the height variance for self-signaling, so that's done. Okay, regular minutes, 9:25 and 10:23. Any motion or changes on the minutes? Ms. Creighton.
9:25, the floodplain person, Mr. Carlson, can you just identify what agency he was from? That would, I think, help to. Unless he, maybe I was just gonna go look, unless he's identified as guest from someplace, whatever agency he was from, we can just add that into the minutes, otherwise, I thought they were fine.
Was he FEMA? Was he FEMA guy?
Was he from, I think he was from the state.
I can look it up. and
Yeah, so we
send it
can-
to,
yeah. That would
Gail.
be, I just think it would really help to understand who is Mr. Carlson.
What's his
Greg's
name?
hands up again.
Carlson,
Oh, Gail's.
yeah, you can look it up.
Oh, she said Greg's hand was up.
What?
She said Greg's hand is up. I
Oh,
believe
Greg,
is what she
go ahead.
said.
Do you have the answer?
Not to that, I wanted to talk about the MIT. I thought it was December 7th, not December 5th, but
And it says the 12th on here. Just in case anybody.
We just
Maybe you can
need
send us an
that
email when it
time.
No, your meeting with
We're meeting-
MIT is the 7th, not the 5th?
No, I believe it's gonna be the 5th or the 12th.
Okay, we'll show up for both.
I'll let you know, I'll let everybody
Let
know.
us know.
The task force is meeting on Thursday, we'll
Okay, we'll
find
figure it out.
out.
Okay, back
Okay,
to
so
minutes.
on the motion to, on Sarah's motion, to. add this-
Approve the 925 with the addition of the designation of where Mr. Carlson
Is there a second?
hails from.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, hand raised.
Absent.
Absent. All those opposed? Okay, 10:23.
And then the other one.
I'm
was
abstaining on, I didn't have a chance, I didn't see that they were on there.
Okay,
Yeah,
one
that's 10
abstention, one not here.
10:23, move to, approve the minutes of, the October 23rd.
Second,
Any discussion? All those in favor, hand.
Christina was
That's,
online, you were. here.
5, 6, and 1 abstention. Other matters, anybody have anything else?
I have one quick thing. Common driveways are in X section 8.4.
Yes, but,
But entrances, or how will we address
So
it?
that, well, that's just we can talk about it next time, but there is the common driveway provisions of 8.4 were not removed.
The entrance, if it's going to more than two or something, how is that being noted? If it's that obvious, how are we noting it?
Actually, I'll put it on the list. I have it on the list still.
So reminder, on Saturday, we'll see you all. Bright and early. Very important.
Move to adjourn.
second.
All those in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you all.